I don't think my college is safe anymore. Story one. I don't even know where to begin, and I don't even know what to think. But I know I have to get this down in fucking writing to make sure I haven't gone insane. Today has been a lot of things, but I think normal is not relatively even in the ballpark. Before I tell you everything, I might as well let you know who I am. My name is Drake. I'm 20 years old and I'm a journalism student working towards my degree like every other broke millennial my age. I wasn't very popular in high school, which is likely the reason my father and I grew so close in that time period. My mother passed when I was young, and my stepmother, Claudia, makes Cinderella's life look like a fucking cakewalk in a New York bakery. I've been told by my father since I was a kid to always tell the truth and never spare a fact, and in every case but this one, he's correct. Whoever may be reading this may know who I am or may be able to connect the dots and find me, so I will be discreet about things until this all ends. What I will reveal about where I am is this. The college I go to is in the middle of nowhere in the northern part of the States. Colder than a witch's tit and a brass bra is frequently used to describe most of our winter weather, and it's pretty accurate. Right now, the ground has a few inches of snow, and it likely won't go anywhere since it won't get warm enough to melt the ice in my cup outside. The college is small. Less than 2,500 people go here, and it's a tight community. Although it's a good school, most of our buildings were built even before my dad and my real mom attended the college in the 80s. I've loved the school since my dad first took me here and would be lying if I said he didn't have a big part in my college decision. Right now, it's our winter intercession of classes, and I'm staying at my dorm. My parents live less than an hour from school, so we decided to get a class in during break to keep me fresh for spring. I have a single room, so I don't have anyone staying with me, and the only other people in the building are my friend Mike, who lives on the floor above me, and a foreign exchange student named Antonius. My window overlooks the courtyard, and since it's on the first floor, I can see everyone that passes by. Although since it's winter break, that amounts to maybe one person every hour or so. I'll start with the beginning. I woke up today, Monday, and went to my class, which is from 8 a.m. till 3 p.m. since it's only a 2-week course. The walk over there was miserable because it's about 1 mile in the snow and goes up a hill or two. I got to the door and Mike was waiting outside with a grin that absolutely symbolized he got laid the night before. Mike was my age, but he looked much older. He was also built like a brick shithouse, standing 6'2" and weighing 200 pounds of muscle. The guy would have been a great linebacker in college football had he not gotten hurt his senior season, but with his frequent gym visits, you couldn't tell he had ever stopped being in football shape. "Hey, hey! Looks like you actually made it on time today, Drake." Yeah. You're just chipper because you probably slept with some exchange student whose name you forgot, Mike. His shit-eating grin got much wider as he nodded his head in agreement. Typical. We waited another few minutes and talked about his Asian addition to the long list of women Mike's had the pleasure of rolling in the hay with. "Oh, also, Drake, here you go." He handed me a tiny box with Christmas wrapping on it. "What's this for?" "For your stepmom, so she'll finally get with a real man." I glared at him. Somehow the grin grew wider. All right, it's for you, man. Merry Christmas." I opened it up and was very surprised. Mike's family was well off, but their generosity to me and my family was incredible. He had given me exactly what I wanted, a new Swiss Army watch. I gave him a hug and thanked him. It was my first Christmas present from someone outside my family in a while. "Maybe now you'll actually get laid too, Drake." "Yeah, next time your sister's in town." We laughed and made virtually everyone around us angry with the noise. Although he's a douche, he's always had my back and been kind to me, so in a way he's my douchey best friend. Which is odd, considering his League of Women compared to mine is like comparing the Patriots and the Browns, so I don't know what keeps him around. Regardless, I'm glad I made a friend in him. The professor walked up and we filed in for class. Biology is the worst class to take for hours on end during your winter break. But at least I had Mike, and at least I wouldn't have to take it in the spring. The lecture was about the respiratory system and seemed to go on for far longer than it's worth talking about. Eventually, class concluded, and Mike and I went to the library to eat before he went to go see another girl that night. Although the college is small, the food is something I'll miss when I leave. We had extra meals left over from the fall, so all during break we ate like kings and likely gained more weight than we should have. As we were eating, a professor from Mike's major stopped by to chat with us for a second. Apparently, Mike needed to see him later on to get notes on a paper he was writing for his upper-level lab classes. I never got how Mike was smart enough to major in biomedical engineering, but he pulled it off. As the professor walked away, he said, "Also, Mike, are we on for dinner during our next office hours?" That comment caught me off guard, but I guess we have a tight-knit school and things like that weren't unheard of. Besides, like my family, most of the faculty knew Mike's family well and were close with them. "Absolutely, Professor. Come hungry and I'll bring something good." We sat and ate for a few more minutes and talked about the girl Mike was seeing tonight. Apparently, Mike saw a future with her if he ever settled down, but he was too busy living the college life to be chained to one woman the rest of his life. Finally, we reviewed what we went over in class today and decided to meet on Thursday all night to study for the final on Friday. After that, Mike took off and went to chase tail somewhere else on campus. I sat at my computer for what felt like ages going over and over every document, photo, and article for this class, but couldn't get anything done because of the music and noise of the restaurant. After some time, I packed up and went to my favorite place in the library. Although the place was over 100 years old and most kids with a phone and girlfriend would stay far away from the place, I loved our library. It was old and had character in its own way and was perfect for our little college. My favorite part was there was a spot where you could essentially hide in a tucked-away corner on the third floor where no assistants or students would bother you. It was nice for studying, but even better for Mike to intrigue freshman girls to hook up with him. I climbed up the stairs and went down the rows and rows of books till I finally found the spot and sat down. I opened up my computer and went back to studying, but quickly found myself getting drowsy and needing at least a power nap to get any information to retain in my head. My phone rang and I saw my dad sent me a text. "Hope class was good. I love you." I opened the message and replied, "The only good part of biology is probably the things you don't want me doing until I'm married, but I guess I can get through this class without it." He sent back a laughing face and said to keep up the good work. I'm glad he has a sense of humor. We never managed to go anywhere without making a few jokes. After checking my email, I set my phone alarm for 25 minutes and laid my head down to take a nap. When I woke, I knew I fucked up. The library was pitch black, except for the exit signs and the light shining in from the street lamps. My phone had died and the sun had set for some time, if I had to guess. Although I tried to turn on my computer, I realized I left the charger at home and that it was dead too. Perfect. As I was packing up to try and leave the library, I saw the watch Mike had gifted me. Looking at the time, I was stunned. It was 1:08 in the morning and the library was certainly closed with the alarm on. Shit. I put my backpack on and quickly began to panic, realizing that there may be no way out unless I was lucky. Let me say something about our library. Although it's nice and has a computer lab or two, it is not somewhere I want to ever be after hours. The shelves are old, creaky, and have a very claustrophobic feeling to them when you're alone and sleep-deprived, but are even more intimidating in the black of night. I started down the rows and rows of books with a very easy pace to make sure I didn't pull a bull in a china shop with the paleontology section. However, I wasn't careful enough. Without paying attention, my body slammed into the next shelf in front of me when I entered into a new row and several books fell to the floor, causing a loud barrage of thunks. Quickly, I bent down to try and pick a few up so that if I was caught, at least I would have had good karma when I heard footsteps. Fuck, fuck, fuck. A light from down the end of the hall appeared, and I quickly rolled to the side and hid behind another row of books a couple yards away. Because of how tightly shelved they were, no one could see me unless I peeked above the books or around the corner. My palms were sweating, and I could hear myself breathe and feel my bladder swell with the need to go. There was almost no way to explain this without getting in some sort of trouble from the school or even the police. The light began to get closer, which was when I first noticed it wasn't a flashlight, but was instead light from some sort of flame. My heart was pounding out of my chest, and I felt my breath get shallower and shallower. That's when I heard voices. What the hell do you think made the noise? Probably books, but if someone's here, you know protocol. Fuck. The light crept through the rows of books, and I finally was able to peer through the stacks and see who was coming. It was two men, both rugged-looking, holding a lantern of all things and dressed in black robes. They looked like something out of a time machine with the odd way they were outfitted. I couldn't imagine what the hell they were doing here, but knew that both me and them weren't supposed to be here. As I crouched to get a better look through the books, my blood ran cold. The taller of the two was covered in blood. His arms, hands, and face looked like he'd slaughtered an animal and decided to get a fresh bite. His eyes looked almost yellow in the lamplight, but I thought maybe I was just seeing things. The shorter had blood practically dripping from his mouth and was holding a knife that I can only assume was stained with the same blood from whatever was on his mouth. The pair seemed to be otherworldly and had almost no emotion in their eyes. Something was inherently wrong with them. They stumbled upon the books that were on the floor and picked them up. Then, for whatever reason, they sniffed them, almost like a search dog. Their noses seemed like a human's, but it had a quality that was so out of place that I thought it couldn't be human. I held my breath and prayed to just get out of there. That's when, from down the hall, a voice called out, "Hurry up! We're starting with or without you." The two men set the books on the shelf, gave one last look, and practically made eye contact with me had I not ducked down again, and left. After the longest few minutes of my life, I finally felt like I could breathe again. I collected myself and began to almost crawl out of the rows and rows of books. I made it to the stairwell and climbed down the flights of stairs quietly to the first floor. Then I heard them. What at first I thought was a hum from the air conditioner, I quickly realized was a chorus of people humming a tune from the basement. Every single part of my body knew I shouldn't go, knew I should leave things as they were and just run out the library, but also knew I couldn't leave matters alone. I crept one stair at a time for what felt like minutes till I finally reached the basement door of the library. The door read, "Out of service," but was cracked open. The voices were louder now, and I could hear both men and women humming this tune. Although it had no words, it was haunting and archaic. No sound could have been more menacing to me than whatever it was these people were making. The ancient door of the library opened surprisingly quietly, and I was surprised at the size of the room. It was about the size of half a football field in length, with file cabinets, shelves, books, and old furniture towards the front, and a congregation of people towards the back. I hesitated one final moment before deciding to finally enter. I removed my shoes to walk silently through the mess of the basement, making sure to not make any sound. The people were all standing in rows with a hospital-like bed in front of them that faced the back wall. The only light in the room was from one lantern seated next to the bed. I couldn't count them all, but I guessed that at least 30 or so people were there. I crouched behind a shelf towards the back of the room and watched in silence at the ritual these people were having. Finally, someone in red robes walked to the front of the people and stood next to the chair. He removed his hood, and I was horrified. The man had red eyes with no eyelids, claw-like nails, and his teeth looked like they had been sharpened to come to a sharp biting point. When he spoke, my hair stuck up on my neck and every bit of my soul seemed to leave my body. Welcome, friends. I shall be quick, for I know the hour is late. The man in red began to speak in a language that I didn't know. It wasn't Latin or any other dead language. It was something evil and beyond what I had ever heard. When he finished speaking, he took a moment and then turned the hospital bed to face the people. On the bed, naked, chained, and covered in scratches, was Antonius. He was struggling to break loose and was screaming through his gag sounds I only hope I can forget. Tears were streaming down his face as he writhed and wiggled to attempt to break free and run, but it was no use. He was stuck. The man in red turned his back towards the people, which was when I first realized the robe had some spots of white in it, and the red was stains. The robe had been white before blood had stained it to look red. That's when he removed the robe and revealed his back. It was rigid, muscular, and covered in scars. It almost glowed from the light of the lantern and had a slimy look. The man turned back towards the people, removed Antonius's gag, and said, "Let us begin." He ran his fingers along Antonius' chest as he began speaking in the language I didn't know. He gently caressed Antonius's face and put his hand under Antonius's chin. He smiled and my stomach did somersaults. As he leaned down, the man in red sank his teeth into Antonius's leg, pulling a chunk out as the room was filled with screams of agony. The blood went everywhere. It ran down his leg and dripped to the floor. It spurted up in a small stream and covered the man in red's face. As Antonius struggled and squirmed, some even got on Antonius's mouth. The man in red bent down once more and took a bite from the boy's calf, tearing muscle out as he came back up. "Please, stop! Help!" Antonius yelled in agony. He began to cry and pray in his native tongue, and you could see pure pain from every fiber in his body. The man in red then took his claw-like nails and put them to Antonius's eyes. With ease, he removed his eyelids, and Antonius screamed for the man in red to kill him. The man in red smiled, put his finger to the boy's lips, and hushed him. He then turned to the congregation of people and said, "Feast." One by one, the members would come, take a single bite, and then resume their place where they were standing, slowly covering themselves in the boy's blood and slowly taking the life, little by little, away from the boy. Eventually, the pain overtook Antonius, and his eyes rolled up as it seemed he had passed out or passed away. As the 10th and 11th members got up, I couldn't stay any longer. As I turned to leave and get out, I saw them. The first stepped towards the bed and paused. The second stood next to the first and paused next to them. Then my father removed his hood as well as Claudia. My heart stopped. There he was, the man whose eyes everyone said I had, the man who I aspired to be like and who I looked up to. The man who taught me to throw a football was opening his mouth towards Antonius, and my stepmother was with him. He sank his teeth into the boy's stomach, and Antonius woke up. He cried out in tears as my father tore the flesh from his stomach, revealing the inside of the boy's body. The last image I saw was my father's face, stained with blood, looking at the man in red with a new yellow color of eyes. I couldn't bear it any longer. Tears fell from my eyes as I began walking backwards to the door. Suddenly, my foot got tangled and knocked over an old broken chair that was behind me. Then my father and Claudia looked at each other, blew out the lantern, and I was covered in darkness once again. The very air in the room seemed to be gone, and everything was still until it wasn't. All at once, I saw 30 pairs of yellow eyes appear in the darkness of the basement, with a singular red pair joining them. I got to my feet as soon as I could and scrambled to get a footing to break into an all-out sprint. As I began to run, I knocked over several items and got snagged on something before finally catching my stride. Behind me, the footsteps echoed down the chamber, sometimes almost sounding as one person, then sounding like a chorus of stampeding animals. They would be on top of me any second if I didn't move my ass out of there. That's when I realized I couldn't see the exit. At full speed, I hoped, prayed, and wished that the door was in the direction I was running. Then my body slammed into the back wall. For a moment, I was dazed. Then the screams of those foul beasts brought me back. The footsteps were getting louder, closer, slapping the floor with their heels in search of the intruder. I reached my hands out as far as I could to either side of me and felt every inch of that goddamn wall and felt nothing but concrete. Gut him like a fish! Grab him! This was it. My dad, the man in red, everyone else, were going to tear me to shreds like animals. My pace quickened. I wouldn't go like this. Then my hand felt it. Something hard, round, able to fit in the palm of my hand, a door hinge. I moved my hand on the smooth metal as the footsteps were getting to be only a few yards away. I found the handle and yanked with all my might, and the door flew open. The cool air rushed past me as I slammed the door shut and ran up the stairs 3 at a time to the first floor. I sprinted for the door at speeds I didn't know my legs even moved at anymore. They were on the stairs. They were coming. As I raced down the rows and rows of books, I saw a broom by the front door and an opportunity. I grabbed the broom and tried the right handle to the double doors. It was locked. With all the strength I had, I pulled the left handle and the door opened with no alarms. Smart. No alarms, no cops, fucking bastards. As I slammed the door behind me, I put the broom through the outside handles and sealed the evil inside, for now. The cold immediately hit my face and froze my nose. I zipped my jacket up and booked it down the snowy sidewalk, up and down the hills and to my dorm. Behind me, I could hear them. Screaming, nearly growling, banging on the glass and yelling at the one who got away. Every second or so, I kept looking over my shoulder to make sure I wasn't followed, expecting to be mauled in the streets. Lights from my dorm finally appeared, and I burst in the door and went to my room. Inside, I bolted the door, drew the curtains, turned out the lights, and broke down. I don't know if you've ever had a near-death experience or if you've ever had your whole world shattered in the same instance, but in that moment, all I felt was agony. From my frozen fucking toes all the way to my fingers, I felt it. Adrenaline, anger, and misery coursed through my being, and the only thing I could bring myself to do was cry. What would I do? What could I do? What could I do? I could pull myself together, so that's what I did. I started with something simple, taking off my shoes. Good. Then I advanced to step 2, removing my jacket and socks. Next, I laid down. The clock read 2:17 as I rolled onto my back and looked at the ceiling. Antonius. I should have helped. Screamed, cried out maybe. Done something to get their attention on me. Maybe I should have died down there too, and at least died with some fucking dignity trying to save a boy from being slaughtered. But that was the past. I couldn't change this. I couldn't fix it. I couldn't fix it. I laid there all night wide awake, tossing and turning restlessly, replaying the scene over and over and over, until finally the light crept in through the small cracks the curtain allowed light to enter from, and so began my new day of hell on earth. I drank a few bottles of water and forced myself to eat, but halfway through my apple, the colors and sound and juice, I couldn't stand it. The clock read 7:35. I slipped my shoes back on and put on my jacket as well. I couldn't bring myself to change clothes. Remembering Mike's gift, I searched through my backpack to put it on. When I picked it up, I noticed something on the underside and examined it closer. Etched into the metal were the words, "White Rabbit." A reference to his favorite book, Alice in Wonderland, but also a running joke that I was almost always late to things. I opened the door and left for class. Outside, the world felt different. Not small, not colder. If anything, it felt empty. Every color ran together and every emotion felt gone. The snow no longer held a beauty. The rich old buildings lost the vintage touch they once possessed. It wasn't the world I had entered into yesterday in any way. I looked at my feet nearly the whole way to class and walked in silently to the building. There was Mike with another grin from ear to ear. It seemed yet another victim had fallen prey to his charm. "Good morning, sunshine!" I wanted to greet him back. I really did, but I only managed a half smile. "Geez, White Rabbit, why the long face? You made it on time at least." I managed a larger smile and punched his arm. Would he think I was lying if I said what had happened last night? We sat and talked about his adventure that night and what all occurred. He was quite proud of himself for sure. Eventually, he knew something was up. "Listen, Drake, you okay, dude? You look like you didn't even sleep. Long night, come by the room later." He looked me over for a minute, then just nodded. The professor walked up and we filed in for class. Now I may be in college and have had all-nighters before, but those were when I was equipped with Adderall and caffeine and just studied all night. This all-nighter had worn me out and I realized my exhaustion about halfway through the class. Although I'm sure that some days your digestive tract is a topic that everyone at a college party is just dying to discuss, this was not one of them. My eyelids grew heavier the longer I sat in that chair, and succumbing to sleep was soon not an option anymore. Maybe if I closed my eyes and just listened to the lecture, I would feel more rested. Yes, surely I just needed to close them for a minute. Just a minute. So I allowed my eyes to close shut and to finally get rest in a room of other college kids, a safe haven. That's when I heard my name called. "Ah, Drake, I see that the digestive tract is so enticing a subject that you fell asleep to imagine it in even more detail." My eyes shot open. "I'm so sorry, I just didn't sleep well last night. I mean, no disrespect." "Not to worry, since you're so keen on showing our body respect. Why don't you stand up and take notes for a few minutes so we can see your real devotion to this topic?" The class got a laugh out of that one. Damn it, now I'll have to work to just get a C from this professor. I stood up and began taking notes. I noticed Mike was staring at me and glanced his way. He had an inquisitive look on his face and was gesturing to me. I shrugged as if to say, "Oh well." He shook his head and kept gesturing. I gave him the old, "What the hell are you looking at me for?" look. Then he pointed to his jacket and for me to look at mine. I looked down and for the first time noticed a hole on my jacket where fabric had been snagged, then torn. All the blood rushed out of my head. The jacket. The fucking jacket. I got snagged last night on something in the library and now a hole was missing on it. I had left evidence behind for the beasts. I quickly started unzipping and unbuttoning it to put it on my chair and hoped no one in here could have seen it or known. How many people did I pass walking to class? Did someone maybe see me who was watching through a window? Does this mean they could track my scent? Would they all have seen the fabric and known to look for someone with a hole in a winter coat? Fuck. Fuck. It was my only jacket too for winter, so I had to wear it if I didn't want to freeze every time I stepped 2 feet out the door. The nightmare wasn't over. It would never end. "Drake, is there something else you wish to do to distract class now?" I looked up and realized that the moment I threw it down, I probably made way more noise than I needed and likely caused me weird glances. No, sorry, Professor. I removed it to get colder and focus more. I really want to do well in here." Everyone essentially groaned. Great. Now I was a teacher's pet too. My eyes went towards the professor and she smiled as she began turning around. That's when I saw it. Her eyes. They had turned yellow for an instant and then faded back to brown slowly as she was turning around. Fuck. She had to have seen the hole, right? No. No, maybe she hadn't seen it because I removed it before anyone but Mike had noticed. Maybe she saw it on the way inside the class. Did she know? Every feeling and emotion from the night before seeped its way through my skin and into my bones. This sick fucking place that I call home would never be safe again. Then I noticed the slides we were going over. The stomach of a pure carnivore. I spent the remainder of class practically sweating in this classroom as I watched this professor lecture. I didn't take a single note. How could I? As soon as we were dismissed, I bolted out. I practically sprinted the whole way back to the dorm and looked every direction as I did. If I wasn't careful and overly paranoid before, I was certainly now. The world didn't feel safe. Was there anywhere I could go? My nearest relative was states away and we hadn't spoken years. My only friend who would let me crash with him was Mike, and he lived one fucking floor above me. I was trapped, like a fox being slowly smoked out. As soon as I got back to my room, I took off my clothes and decided I had to shower. At least then I could get the sweat off and maybe could smell different than that night in the library. The steamy water, which usually always brought me relief and put me at ease, had no effects. As it ran down my body, causing little streaks that joined big streaks that eventually joined big water droplets and fell towards the world, I just sat and watched. I closed my eyes to try and relax, but instead thought of Antonius. Visions of him being soaked in his own blood and helpless to even move ran through my head. The man in red, the congregation, the lantern, the blood. The blood. It ran down so many of their faces just like water. They were so accustomed to their feeding that blood seemed to be nothing more than fucking water to them. Water. Suddenly, I had the overwhelming feeling that instead of bathing in water, I was bathing in the blood of Antonius, and I could hear him scream, "Please!" I shut off the water and tried to wipe every last drop off me. I didn't want one damn drop anywhere on my body. Even walking back to my room in an empty dorm seemed like a daunting task now that I had to do each day. Inside, I changed into new jeans and a new long-sleeve shirt. 3 knocks came from my door. My body froze. They had come. Scanning the room for anything to defend myself with, I grabbed a mug and broke it against my desk to give me some sort of fighting chance. I wouldn't go down without taking one of those bastards to hell. Positioning myself next to the doorframe, I poised myself to strike. Counting to 3, I threw the door open and there was Mike holding a case of beer. "Whoa, calm down there, Rambo, it's Mikey." I glanced at the sharp mug, threw it to the side, and gave my only friend in the world a hug that spoke more words than I was capable of at that moment. At first, his arms stayed at his side. Then he wrapped them around my back and squeezed. He was here to help. "All right, I know I'm a piece of ass, but enough with our Brokeback Mountain shit here, man." We pulled away, and for the first time in what felt like years, I let out a real laugh. He settled into my room, and I cleaned up the mess of the coffee mug. Mike was already knocking back a beer when the mess was all cleaned, and he had a troubled look on his face. I had to tell him. "All right, man, you gotta tell me what the fuck's gotten into you lately." I sat on my bed while he sat in my chair and told him everything. Each and every detail in the most vivid description I could. Every color, every sound, every yellow fucking eye. The man in red, Antonius, the 2 men, my dad. He listened intently to everything, and when I finished with the teacher and getting back here, he just sat silently for a moment. I couldn't tell what he was thinking. Did he even believe me? "Drake, I know you're a good kid and don't lie, but just to be sure, you weren't high?" "No." "Sleep deprived?" "Dude, no." "Not trying to scare me with some hocus pocus bullshit?" "Mike, I'm fucking serious, man." His face got intense and he nodded. "Okay, but how do I just believe this off a whim? Come on, man, this is something you call the cops for or that you read in a fucking book. Calling the cops? Fuck, my phone was still dead. I pulled it out and put it on the charger for the first time since yesterday. We talked through everything and I asked him if he'd seen Antonius today, and that's when he began looking uneasy. Actually, no. And that Asian girl texted me today and said she didn't know where he was either. She said they were both friends and were supposed to meet for coffee, but he wasn't responding. Asian girl? Mike, do you know her name? Dude, fuck off right now. Does that even matter? You may be right about this, and now there may be some serious shit about to happen, and you're thinking about some goddamn girl I was with? After a second of silence, he added, I think her name is Yong. We both smiled. I'm glad he at least had some suspicion of her name. Mike had an idea. He opened up his laptop and searched for missing people in our town, and the results were haunting. Almost one exchange kid and one out-of-town kid went missing here every single month, but were all ruled to be runaways or exchange students who went back home. One of those animals had someone in the police on their side. Fuck, what the fuck do we do, Mike? I don't know, man, I don't even know. What could we do? My room felt even smaller than a cramped college room was. The sun was setting and I knew that in the dark, out there they were waiting somewhere, two of them in my own home. Okay, what if we scope out the library, from the inside or maybe even from the outside? We could try and determine who they are or maybe even set up a surprise attack on the man in red. Mike, we have no weapons. What are we gonna do? Attack them with broken cafeteria mugs? Well, what else can we do? We have no money to get a gun or to get something that'll really do damage, do we? We didn't. He was right. We were defenseless. Just two kids against a small army. My phone buzzed with a message and I looked. It was from my dad. Hey, kiddo, don't forget about family dinner here in an hour and a half. Your mom will have our hides if you don't show. We've been planning it for a month. After sitting in silence for what felt like an hour, I turned to Mike and let him see the horror on my face. Before he could even get the words out, I handed him my phone. His face turned pale, and for the first time in our entire friendship, I saw Mike terrified. Fuck! Drake, you can't go to that. Say something, anything. For God's sake, don't put your head in the lion's jaw. He handed me my phone back, and I began thinking, well, how the hell do I get out of it? They have been reminding me for forever, and there's no reason that will be good enough to not go. They agreed to let me stay here over break on the condition that I make good grades and that I go to this dinner. Why? It's a dinner. You can miss a family dinner, can't you? Mike, it's the anniversary of my grandfather's death. My dad lost him and my mother in a quick time frame, and we always have dinner because of it. That only seemed to make him more frustrated. Drake, for the love of God, they will see right through you. They will figure it out. You have no poker face and the dread of the situation will get the best of you. Okay, well, what excuse could I use? Don't you think it would be out of the blue to cancel right before I fucking go? I don't know. Finals. Or you're sick. Or you don't want to drive in the car with the snow? Something dawned on me. Mike, wait. Even though he was right, without a question, completely and utterly right, and there was no fucking logic in going, I realized why I might have to attend. He has guns. What? My dad, he hunts, or at least he did while I was growing up. He has weapons, and that's our only shot at even being close to fighting these. Mike leaned back and took a breath. I could see him working this problem in his head, and watch the cogs turn over and over, pondering this. He knew I was right. I knew I was right. But the hatred of knowing the truth of the matter was evident in both of us. My dad had at least 2 rifles that we had used to hunt deer when I was growing up. He also always kept a handgun in his desk in the study in case of an emergency. The only problem was getting in, getting the guns, and leaving without them noticing they were gone. 3 guns, our only chance at salvation against their small army. Okay, where are they in the house? He has one in his desk drawer, a handgun. The other two are somewhere else in the house. I'm almost certain they are in his closet or maybe in the garage. Drake almost only counts with horseshoes, hand grenades, or atom bombs. We can't fucking work with almost. My phone buzzed again. I saw you read that punk. You going to leave your poor old man on red? The time for a decision had passed. I had to go. Look, I have to go to this. We don't have time to plan it here, but we could talk over everything on the phone while I drive. Mike stood up in what at first I thought was protest, then knew was love when he hugged me. Don't you dare die on me, White Rabbit. Don't you dare fucking die out there. I hugged him back. In that moment, I realized Mike really wasn't my friend. Friends were people you drank with, got close to, and saw a decent amount. Maybe occasionally they spot you a few bucks to help pay for food or a movie ticket. That wasn't Mike. Mike was someone I saw every day, regardless of our schedules. Someone I called on for advice or enlightenment or a laugh. A person who I looked up to as much as he looked up to me. He had dropped everything to help me, and I had dropped everything to help him over the course of time we had known each other. He had my best interests at heart, and I did as well for him. Friends wasn't a good enough term. He was my brother, my right-hand man, the only person in the world I could call family. I squeezed him back. I won't. I put on my jeans and jacket and walked to my car. As soon as I got in, I finally replied to my dad, "Sorry, man, went to shower. Be there soon." As the car started, my phone rang and I picked up the phone. All right, Drake, what's the plan for getting in? While driving, Mike and I formulated everything we could for the night. I would go in and settle down into the house and try to act normal. Likely, my parents would be finishing up the cooking, so I'd have maybe a few minutes to go to the garage and get a soda from the fridge and look around. If they were in there, I could open the garage and head to my car and put them right in. Then, after we eat for a little, I could excuse myself to the bathroom to take a look in the study since it was next to it. At that time, I'd text Mike letting him know to call me in 10 minutes about classwork. When he calls, I could search Dad's closet, and if they are there, try to sneak out the back with them. The plan wasn't 100% bound to work, but it's the best we could come up with. All right, Drake, I'll let you concentrate on the road. I love you, man. I love you too, Mike. Talk to you soon. We hung up and I drove on. The clock on my dash read 6:58, meaning I had about 20 minutes left on the drive and 32 before dinner would begin. Although the town was small, I loved every piece of my home. It was quaint, tucked away, and beautiful. My mother and I had taken a few drives through the more rural part of it when I was little, and those still are some of the most dear memories I have. My street is about a mile away from the school and is 2 streets away from the main strip of the town. Every time I pass by my high school, it seems smaller and smaller. It's as if I travel back in time each pass. Coming back to the same buildings, the same football fields, the same gym, but I have aged while it has remained the same. Although I don't miss a bit of that God-forsaken place, I think I'd prefer the cramped hallways and terrible-smelling bathrooms to the reality I face now. The silence was killing me in the car. I needed music to fill the emptiness and dread, so I turned the radio on. John Denver played through the speakers, and my journey towards home continued down country roads. What would happen? Did they possibly already know that I was the culprit from the library? Could I even get the guns out of the house? The biggest thing on my mind, though, was just who the hell was my dad. I thought my whole life I knew who him and Claudia were and thought I had them figured out. How many people did my dad help slaughter? How many innocent lives fell to him and the man in red? I wouldn't let that happen to me. He and Claudia would have to kill me before I got strapped to that damn bed. After what felt like an eternity, I pulled into my driveway. The clock read 7:20. It was time. I took the key out of the ignition and walked to the door. Passing through the yard where I played catch with my dad, up the sidewalk where my handprints were forever ingrained into the cement, under the tree where the tire swing drooped unused for years, finally to the porch where we took family photos. I walked to the house. Upon entering the house, I noticed for the first time that this wasn't a home anymore. The walls, which at one point held old wallpaper my mother had helped my dad put up, were now riddled with a tan paint that Claudia had used. I thought I hated that color before. Now I detested it. The floors, which used to be covered in a soft white carpet, were now littered with a fake wood floor. Our photo frames now contained pictures of my father, Claudia, and me. All of the sudden, my hatred grew for this place. This once lovely home with character and memories was now a tomb for a wicked bitch and a liar. "Hey, punk! Looks like you made it on time for once." My dad came to the door and gave me a hug. My stomach rolled. "Hey, Pops." He released from it and gave me a smile. How many kids had passed through those white teeth in his malevolent jaw? How many souls had he ripped away with his sick hunger? I had to settle down, or else this whole plot would be ruined. "Well, kiddo, your mom just finished the food and set the table, so we're all set." "Stepmother." My dad shot me a look of confusion, caught off guard by my comment. "Son, come on. Don't do this tonight. She will skin us alive." I bet he'd like that, but he was right. Keep cool, and get out fast. I put my coat on the coat rack and took my shoes off. Inside the dining room, Claudia was already at the table, ready to go, suited with a smile that I could see right through. We really hated one another. "Hi, Drake. How was the drive?" "It was fine. I'm going to grab a soda from the garage real fast." "Oh, honey, we got rid of that old fridge. We just keep the soda in the kitchen now, but I knew you'd want one, so I set it on the table for you." Sure enough, there was my carbonated scapegoat sitting next to my plate. Shit, I just have to find a way to get in the garage during dinner. My father and I sat at the table, and I reached towards the center plate to remove the lid and begin eating, when Claudia slapped my hand and said, "Hey now, sweetie, not before you say grace." The stinging didn't faze me. The house didn't faze me. Nothing mattered to me in that moment other than the fact that I wanted to kill Claudia. But I put my hands together, closed my eyes, and obliged. God is great. Antonius. His face popped into my head. The screams, the man in red, Claudia and my father killing him. I took a breath. God is good. My mother, my poor mother, who was an angel to all and universally loved, did she fall victim to this? Was she involved in any of this shit? Let us thank him for our food. Their food. Their sick hunger for humans, for people I knew, for kids my own age. They wouldn't get away with this. They just couldn't. By his hands, we are fed. I will kill Claudia, and I'll have to kill my father, too. Thank you for our daily bread, amen. Dad and Claudia turned and smiled to me, my very soul snapping with rage. Claudia removed the lid and revealed steaks, 3 of them. My father and her took the smallest 2 and left the last for me. As they cut into their steaks, for the first time I noticed they were cooked rare, red, juicy, tender. While we ate, we discussed my dad's latest hunting trip along with Claudia's recent obsession with home DIY projects. Eventually, they asked me about class, and Mike and I kept every answer short and curt. They tore into the steak, chewing with their mouths almost open as the animal's juices streamed down their lips. The plan needed to start. Now. "Hey, I'll be right back. Long drive and I need to use the bathroom." I got up from the table and headed to the restroom by the study. Peering over my shoulder before entering, I pushed the door open and began the search. The top 2 drawers were empty, although I was sure it was in here. It had to be. I pushed aside old documents and family photos, rummaging as quickly as I could past the pens, papers, and office items. Panic almost took me over until finally I saw it. A revolver, 6 shots, .357 Magnum. Perfect. The box of bullets laid next to it, and I pocketed those as well. I unloaded the gun and put it tucked away between my underwear and jeans, out of sight, out of harm's way. That's when I saw it. Hanging on the wall was the hunting rifle I used as a kid. Fuck. Why was it in here of all places? Without thinking, I stood on a chair and took it down. But the bullets, where could they be? I searched through the drawer one last time and found them, 30 rounds in a box. Now the issue was sneaking a hunting rifle out of the study. Hey, champ, you okay in there? Shit. I'd been gone too long and was drawing attention. Yeah, 1 second. Now the final hour was upon me. I decided to just try my luck and bring it to my room when I remembered the window. The window. Quickly, I threw it open and set the gun on the outside of the house. It'd be hard to grab on the way out, but it was my only chance. When I re-entered the dining room, I quickly began eating as fast as I could. The sooner I got out of here, the better. Then it hit me. Mike. I never sent the text. How could I get up from the table now? We had 2 guns with the rifle and revolver, but having 2 rifles would be loads better than having just one. I shoveled steak in my mouth as fast as I could and asked, "Hey, could I call Mike really fast? I think I forgot about a homework due tomorrow." "Oh, no, 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 sweetheart. If your daddy can't take work calls during dinner, neither can you." "Of course I couldn't, you bitch. I just have to wait till after dinner." We finished eating about 10 minutes later and concluded dinner with cake. It seemed like time had virtually come to a standstill and dinner would never end. Claudia and my father peppered me with questions about girls and friends, which I brushed off quickly. When we had finally finished everything, Claudia began clearing off the table and Dad asked to speak to me for a moment alone. Oh no, he knew. "Son, I have to ask you something." Yeah, Dad, what's up?" "Well, Claudia seems to think you have been doing something at school that is troubling. Fuck. I think you may have upset her and me a great deal. Here it comes. He was going to finish me as a nightcap to his meal." "Son, have you ditched any of your winter classes?" Relief coursed through me like whiskey on a cold night with Mike. "Oh, Dad, no. Mike and I have been to every single one. I just texted you both later in the day lately because I've been so busy." His smile went ear to ear. "All right, son, just make good grades. You know I love you." I hated that I couldn't love him. How could he do this? To Antonius, to me. I'll never understand. I will never ever understand him again. "Oh, Drake, you tore a hole in your dad's old jacket he gave you." No amount of self-discipline could have kept my straight face. The game was up. "What now? He tore a hole in my coat?" My father left the table and went to inspect the coat. His coat, my coat, the fucking coat that I wore in the library. There they were, 2 killers in front of the door. I sprinted full force and pulled the handle of the door to salvation open. While sprinting for the gun, they finally realized who I really was, and their eyes changed to yellow. Story 2. There's a man on my campus who they call the gift giver. The bare concrete floor of the basement stuck to my shoes, gray strands of something, maybe cobwebs or ripped insulation hung from the rafters above. The crowd was so thick I couldn't move, but even more masked, half-dressed people were still coming down the stairs. As a pre-med student, I knew that standing so close to the speakers meant guaranteed hearing damage, but I was just glad to be attending my first ever college party. A shirtless guy with curly black hair gripped the sides of a keg and flexed into a perfect handstand. He chugged so much beer that I felt sick just watching him, then dive-rolled into the shrieking crowd. He was my roommate, Brett Harrison III, and he was the only reason why I had been invited out that night. The truth was, I never felt like I fit at this elite university, or even in this country. My parents immigrated to the United States from Japan a few weeks after my ninth birthday. I was just old enough to understand that I was leaving my home and friends behind forever, but still too young to think of the change as an opportunity. Everyone was so much louder and more aggressive than I was used to. The food was greasy or overly sweet, and most of my classmates didn't seem to care about school at all. Every night, I prayed that my parents would take me back to my home country, but their minds were made up. As far as they were concerned, my future was already decided. I would graduate from a U.S. high school, study medicine at a top-tier university, and have a respectable, high-paying career anywhere that I pleased. Couldn't I see how much they were sacrificing to give me this once-in-a-lifetime chance? My classmates didn't understand the pressure I was under, or why I had to prioritize studying over socializing. By my second year of college, I had resigned myself to a friendless existence, and then Brett moved in. It didn't matter to him that I always had my nose buried in a textbook. He would kick up his feet and talk at me anyway. No matter how many times I turned down his invitations, he just kept repeating them. I knew that Brett didn't need a friend, just an audience, but the companionship was nice all the same. Now Brett was polishing off a bottle of gin and breaking it against his head, for reasons that could only have made sense in Brettland. I was amazed by how much the guy could drink, and that night on our walk back from the party, I finally worked up the nerve to ask him what his secret was. "It's a gift," Brett said with a wink. Seeing the blank expression on my face, he paused beneath a streetlight and stared. "You really don't know, do you? You've never heard about the gift giver." It sounded like the start of a bad joke, but Brett was completely serious. The wind blew dead, crackling leaves across the lonely nighttime street as my roommate began his story. According to Brett's grandfather, who had been the first in his family to attend our university, the gift giver legend was as old as the campus itself. He only appeared between midnight and dawn, and even then he only showed himself to students who were struggling through some kind of problem alone. Brett claimed to have met the gift giver while puking into a trash can beside the rec center. The only problem on his mind that night had been wishing that he could drink as much alcohol as he wanted with no consequences afterward. Dimly aware of a presence beside him, he had turned his head sideways and spotted a pair of shiny black shoes. After standing there silently for a long moment, the owner of the old-fashioned footwear had told Brett that what he was looking for was in the top drawer of his desk. When he checked later, he found a container of tiny red pills that hadn't been there before. If he took one before a night out, Brett said, it didn't matter how much he drank. All he would feel was a pleasant, consequence-free buzz. Breaking down Brett's story, it sounded to me like what had really happened was that my roommate had met a pill dealer while on a bender, wandered home blackout, and filled in the gaps in his memory with his grandfather's tall tale. Only one part of the story made sense. Faced with an offer of anything that a person could wish for, it was just like Brett Harrison III to request a cure for a hangover. When I asked him what the gift giver had wanted in return, however, he just squinted at me. It was a gift, right? Aren't gifts supposed to be free? A few minutes later, Brett spotted some girls he knew and jogged across the street to talk to them, leaving me to finish the walk back to our dorm alone. I didn't blame him. If I had his confidence, I would have probably done the same thing. Strolling toward campus with my hands stuffed in my pockets, I couldn't help but wonder about the gift giver. If I ran into him now, what would I ask for? I didn't have a clear answer to my own question. Not then, anyway. I started partying with Brett more and more after that night. I told myself that I was finally coming out of my shell, but the real reasons were more complicated than that. It was my junior year, and classes were tougher than ever. My grades were slipping, and the only way that I could pretend that things were going to be all right was by ignoring them completely. When I finally dared to look, it was worse than I had imagined. I was at risk of losing my scholarship, and unlike Brett, I didn't have a millionaire family whose donations guaranteed that I would graduate. It wasn't just that I was going to fail out of school, it was that my parents' sacrifice, and everything that I had given up to meet their expectations, it was all going to have been for nothing. The only way that I could turn things around was by achieving a 97% or higher on the end of course exam. The problem was I doubted I would even be able to pass the test, much less earn a near perfect score. Soon, not even Brett's parties were enough to make me forget what was coming. I began going for long walks alone at night, barely paying attention to the weather, my surroundings, or even where I was going. I wandered through silent parking lots and between lightless buildings, discovering parts of campus that I never knew existed, and that was how I finally met the gift giver. As the cold intensified, I had taken to bringing a thermos of hot coffee with me on my walks. That night, I stopped on a bench behind the university's power plant to take a few sips. Why there was a bench between a chain link fence and some undeveloped woods was a mystery, but it felt like as good a place as any for a rest. I was about to continue my walk when I noticed someone standing at the corner of the fence. Backlit by the power plant's lights, I couldn't make out their features. Only an old-fashioned umbrella, a baggy gray suit, and a pair of polished black shoes. The figure lurched toward me with an uneven gait, limping as though they had been crippled by some terrible accident. Rather than feeling sympathetic, however, I was suddenly afraid. I looked at the ground, hoping that the stranger would pass by. But he sat down beside me instead. Somehow he had crossed the distance between us in only a few seconds. I kept my eyes down, a gut instinct warning me that if I looked at the stranger's face, I might not like what I saw. "Stay away from your exam on Friday," he whispered, in a guttural voice that made my hair stand on end. "If you don't go, your score will be the best in your class. I guarantee it." Before I could respond, he pushed himself painfully back to his feet and hobbled away into the darkness. The whole encounter couldn't have lasted more than 2 minutes, and when it was over, I found myself questioning whether it had ever happened at all. Was this what going crazy felt like? My exam was just 2 days away, and I spent every waking minute of them agonizing over what I should do. Part of me was convinced that I had actually met the gift giver, but another part was sure that the whole thing had just been a hallucination brought on by stress. At 4 a.m. on the morning of the test, I groaned, rolled over in bed, and switched off my alarm. The hell with it, I thought. I was going to fail anyway, so why not give the gift giver a chance to work his magic? I woke up 20 minutes before the exam was scheduled to start, and with nothing better to do, I strolled to the dining hall for a late breakfast. On the way, I ran into Brett. He scratched his head when he saw me. "Didn't I have an exam this morning?" I gave him a wink. "The gift giver was taking care of it," I said. Brett went pale. I had never seen him look so serious. He put his hand on my shoulder. "You need to get to your test," he whispered. I ran. I ran even though I didn't know why I was running, even though I was probably already too late. Had Brett been trying to tell me that his story was bullshit, or was there something more sinister behind his words? Had his own gift gone wrong somehow? There was no time to think it over. I arrived on the second floor of the science building with my heels skidding on the hallway tiles, just in time to watch all 16 of my classmates file into the exam room. Wait, 16? There were 16 people in my Organic Chemistry 3 class, including me. There was something odd about the guy standing in the shadows at the end of the line, but I didn't believe it until he stepped into the light. He was me, a perfect copy. Our identical eyes met and his mouth stretched into a too-wide, wicked smile. My jaw dropped. Before I could react, my duplicate had entered the exam room. The door was locked. The test was about to begin. Its results, however, were suddenly the last thing on my mind. I needed to find Brett. I needed to know what the hell was going on. Brett wasn't in the dining hall where I'd left him, or in the rec center where he usually spent Friday mornings knocking a ping pong ball around and swapping stories with his fraternity brothers. Our dorm room was the last place I considered checking, and by the time I entered the lobby, over 2 hours had passed. For better or worse, the exam was over. Lydia, the front desk worker, stood up as I approached the stairs. I saw her every Friday, yet for some reason she suddenly wanted to inspect my student ID. I fished my wallet out of my pocket and held it out to her. She examined the plastic card, suspicious. "Sir," she informed me, "this ID expired in 1997. Dorms are for current students only. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Her hand inched toward the phone on her desk. She was afraid of me, I realized. She was getting ready to call security. While I backed away, doing my best to look non-threatening, I glanced down at my ID. I didn't recognize anything about the person I saw. Not the blurry photo, the date of birth, the address, nothing. That wasn't all. My hands, too, were different. How could I have overlooked it before? They were tanned and hairy, with bitten-off nails and a worm-like white scar that I couldn't remember ever getting. I rushed to the nearest public restroom I knew of, the one on the first floor of the Student Services building. Even though I already suspected what I would find when I looked into the mirror, the shock of it was so great that I nearly passed out. I gripped the edges of the sink, staring helplessly at the reflection of a complete stranger. Who was I? And who or what had taken my place? There was a computer lab near the lobby. Even if my physical identity had been stolen, I still had my login information, and I could use it to research the person who I had somehow become. I punched in the data from the stranger's student ID Terrence Witt, born July 8, 1976. Billing address, Nashville, Tennessee. It was immediately clear to me that Terrence Witt was a missing person. He had been 21 years old when he'd vanished from the university library one foggy spring night. The security cameras had captured Terrence entering the building but not leaving it, and online forums I read were full of strangers speculating about what might have happened. Some suspected that he had gotten lost in the library's maze-like basement, which was under construction at the time, and that his corpse had been entombed in its walls. Others argued that Terrence must have been deep into the university's drug culture and had wound up owing money to the wrong people. I had my own theory about why Terrence Witt had gone missing, and it had everything to do with the gift giver. I looked down at Terrence's face, my face on the worn-out college ID. Terrence, you poor bastard. What gift were you after? The Witts had posted a phone number for tips or information about their son's disappearance, and even though the website hadn't been updated since the early 2000s, I figured I didn't have anything to lose by calling it. I was shocked when someone picked up on the third ring. The old woman on the other end of the line was Terrence's mother, and she had kept the number open even after all these years. I sputtered, suddenly remembering that I needed to provide information of my own before I asked any questions. I quickly asked if Terrence had a small white scar on his left hand. His mother's response was so hopeful and excited it hurt. "Yes," she shouted. "Have you seen him?" I told her that I thought I might have, but I needed to know something first. Did she have any idea about why her son might have wanted to disappear? Anything that was bothering him at the time? "You know," Mrs. Witt said finally, "you're the first person to call this number in over 13 years. I suppose there's no harm in telling you. Terrence didn't want to leave that university. He wanted to stay in school and finish his PhD, but my husband, God rest his soul, demanded that he come home to take over the family business. You don't think that could have anything to do with his disappearance, do you?" I muttered that I had to go, that I would call back when I knew more. Mrs. Witt's voice was still ringing in my ears, and I could already imagine how it might have gone. Terence, bitter and disillusioned, is roaming aimlessly through the library. There's hardly anyone here this late at night. The fluorescent lights hum overhead. The ugly gray carpet muffles his footsteps. Someone clears their throat on the other side of the shelves. A stranger's voice whispers to him through a gap in the books. It tells Terence that he can stay at the university after all, if only he follows a few simple instructions. Wouldn't that be a lovely gift? A security guard was watching me suspiciously through the computer lab windows. As he muttered something into his radio, I hurried out the back entrance. I headed for the park at the center of the university. I didn't think that campus police were actively searching for me, but if they were, it would be a good place to lose them. The park was a bowl-shaped ravine crisscrossed by paths, most of them half hidden by bushes, rows of gnarled old trees, and the walls of a large amphitheater. The leaves had fallen weeks ago, but there was still enough cover to pass by unobserved, I hoped. This late on a Friday afternoon, the park was almost completely empty. On a bench up ahead, however, I spotted two figures, a boy and a girl. Their heads were pressed together as though they were having an intimate conversation, but the closer I got, the more wrong the situation looked. The girl leaned her body nervously away from the boy, who had a white-knuckle grip on her wrist. He was holding her in place, and while I wasn't sure what he was muttering into her ear, it was clear that she didn't like it. When I saw the boy's face, I understood that no matter how much time passed, I would never get used to the feeling of seeing my own body under something else's control. With horror, I realized that I recognized the girl as well, Raquel. I had had a crush on her since freshman year, but had never worked up the courage to talk to her. "Just think about what will happen if you refuse," my duplicate hissed into her ear. "What would your parents think if they found out? You don't want me as your enemy." I forced myself to stop and ask the couple if everything was all right. My own face glared angrily up at me, and for a second, and I would have sworn that my duplicate's eyes went inky black. It was like staring into two lightless pits, and from the way Raquel screamed, I was sure that she had seen it too. "Get away from me, you freak!" she shouted, then fled down the trail. My duplicate stood, cracked its neck, then punched me in the stomach. The wind went out of my lungs. I doubled over in the damp grass, gasping for air. My duplicate knelt beside me and pressed my face into the dirt. "This is my life now, mine, and you're never getting it back. Understand?" it snarled. I couldn't breathe. My mouth filled with the reek of mud and rotting leaves. "Hey!" someone shouted, and the weight on my back disappeared. Running footsteps approached. I spat black muck into the grass. It was the security guard from the Student Services building. The bulky older man hauled me to my feet, dusted me off, and asked if I was all right. Once he'd confirmed that I wasn't going to die in his custody, he pointed to the parking lot that marked the edge of the university. "I've had my eye on you for a while," he grunted. "You've been nothing but trouble ever since you showed up, and if I see you around here again, I'm going to detain you for trespassing. Are we clear?" I nodded. I didn't have much choice. With no money and no way of proving who I really was, I could only wander the chilly gray streets until sunset. Around twilight, the sound of wailing sirens made me look toward the liquor store at the edge of campus. A red-faced, bellowing student was being dragged through its doors by 4 police officers. It was Brett. By the time I jogged up to the liquor store, my roommate had already been taken away. The store owner and a cashier were still outside, having a smoke and shaking their heads. With a sinking feeling in my gut, I approached and asked them what had happened. The owner, a grizzled old man in a white apron, said that he had never seen anything like it. Apparently, Brett had stumbled into the store 15 minutes earlier, rambling about how he needed more. He had unscrewed a bottle of whiskey, chugged it, and then did the same to the next one. By the time the cashier realized what was going on, Brett had polished off 5 without a single sign of drunkenness. When the owner tried to stop him, he shattered a bottle and threatened them with its jagged edges, and still he kept drinking. Even after the police tackled and cuffed him, Brett was still fighting to lick a few last drops of alcohol from the floor. His tongue, shredded by broken glass, had left a bloody smear across the filthy tiles. If Brett died on the way to the hospital, it would probably be attributed to alcohol poisoning, but I knew better. His gift, like mine and Terrence's, was twisted from the beginning. He may have wanted a cool party trick, but what he had gotten was something dangerous, something that had to be fed. I felt certain that if Brett couldn't feed his gift, it would consume him instead. And what about my so-called gift? What was my duplicate using my name and my body to do even now? Somehow I had to find the gift giver for a second time. I returned to campus under cover of darkness, and by 2 a.m. I had circled the entire university 3 times. My legs ached, my eyelids were heavy, and I could see my breath in the frosty air. I was halfway through a parking lot underpass when I heard the tap of an umbrella on the concrete behind me. I turned slowly, and in the yellowish glow of the underpass solitary light, I saw the gift giver face to face for the first time. Where his eyes, ears, and nose should have been were only empty pits. His awkward movements, I realized, were caused by his bent backwards limbs. Even so, he was fast, faster than should have been possible. The light flickered, I blinked, and suddenly his face was mere inches from mine. "What's wrong?" he rasped through graying, empty gums. "You don't like your gift?" I bit down a scream. The gift giver made a horrible, gurgling noise that might have been a giggle. "You can give it back, you know, as long as you do a favor for me in return." Forcing my lips to move again, I asked the gift giver what he wanted. "Oh, that's easy. I want you to kill me." My jaw dropped. "See that concrete brick over there? Smash it into my skull, again and again and again until there's nothing left. Do that, and your duplicate will disappear. You'll be yourself again. Do we have a deal?" I hesitated. The gift giver was literally asking me to commit murder, and what was the catch in his new offer? Would I get my body back, only to spend the rest of my days rotting in prison? Or would the consequences of returning my gift be something even worse, something unimaginable? I thought about spending the rest of my days in Terrence Witt's body, forced to do nothing but watch while my duplicate committed horrors using my name, my face, and my reputation. I thought about my parents, about the padded cell where I would be locked up if I ever tried to tell anyone the truth. Nothing could be worse than that. Could it? I could see the brick the gift giver was talking about, surrounded by slimy puddles and trash. It seemed to have its own gravity. It seemed to be calling to me. I swallowed. My throat was dry. I told the gift giver to turn around. I lifted the brick in my hand and took a deep breath. As long as I didn't think about what I was doing, it was no different than hammering in a nail or tenderizing a slab of meat. The gift giver had asked me to do this, I reminded myself, and then I swung. He went down the moment the sharp edge cracked against his skull, but I didn't stop. I shut my eyes tight, gritted my teeth, and smashed the brick into his head until I didn't have the strength to lift it anymore. A sick burbling sound made me look down. The gift giver was laughing, and that wasn't all. Something was moving beneath his skin. No, that wasn't right. His flesh itself was changing, reshaping itself into the form of someone else, someone who I thought I recognized. I rolled the gift giver's corpse over with the tip of my shoe, and looked down at the ruined face of Terrence Witt. It didn't make sense. If Terrence Witt had been the gift giver all along, then where had the legend come from? Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Terrence Witt's body was a gory mess. I was holding the murder weapon, and a witness could come along at any time. What mattered now was distancing myself from the scene and washing away the evidence. The bloodstains weren't obvious on my dark jacket. They could have been anything, and I had my doubts that the stuff was even blood at all. The oily black liquid that had splattered from the gift giver's wound was thick and viscous. It seemed to sink into my clothes and skin rather than dripping off of them. With a shudder, I wiped away what I could and hurried back to my dorm. 15 minutes later, I was crossing the threshold of the lobby. It felt like a moment of truth. Behind the front desk, Lydia looked up from her computer and gave me a small smile. She had recognized me. It was all the proof I needed that I was truly myself again. I left my filthy clothes on the floor of my room, wrapped up in a towel, and hurried down the hallway to the bathroom. The communal showers always smelled like mold, bleach, and too much cologne, but that night they felt like heaven. Beneath the hot water, I felt reborn. Tomorrow would be a new day. I could finally put this nightmare behind me. My confidence lasted only as long as it took me to dry off, change into my pajamas, and return to my lightless dorm room. The clothes that I had piled on the floor were gone. In their place was a gray silk suit, a black umbrella, and a pair of polished shoes. I clamped a hand over my mouth. I felt a tooth wiggle loose and then fall out. I finally understood the deal I had made with Terrence Witt, the same deal that he must have made with the gift giver before him. It's just a matter of time now. I can feel my eyes sinking into their sockets, my elbows and knees beginning to bend in the wrong direction. There has always been a gift giver on this campus, and there always will be.